Hello, my name is Evelyn Luna, and this is Violence at the U.S. and Mexico border. Thousands of people cross the U.S. and Mexico border every year. Many take the risk to illegally cross the border in hopes for a brighter future. On the other side, many also cross the border to go to school or visit nearby cities. But at what cost? It has been revealed that people crossing the border, legally or not, are wrongfully subjected to violence and harassment, and it is not talked about enough. The process of crossing the border. According to researchers Michael Huspecht in the report Violations of Human and Civil Rights on the U.S.-Mexico Border, there is a specific routine Border Patrol follows. They are broken down into three categories. The first is labeled as In No Man's Land, Flight and Punishment, Surrender and Punishment. In this stage, the victim acts on their plan of crossing the border. Once caught, they are forced to decide to run or surrender. However, as mentioned by the author, even if they surrender, he or she may nevertheless suffer. This leads into second category labeled the gaze, queries, and commands. At this point, the patrol observes and racially profiles the person if they are darker in skin, are not fluent in English, or seem nervous. Then comes the third stage as described by the researchers, intensified tactics. Once cornered, the Huspecht states queries may be converted into a full-fledged interrogation. Commands come increasingly into play as subjects are ordered to exit vehicles and submit to an assortment of authoritative probes. This stage ultimately leads to the harassment and abuse of power in the process of being caught crossing. This stage is what establishes the need for awareness and against the abuse of power occurring at the border. As said by Malcolm Holmes in the article Perceptions of Abusive Police Practices in a U.S.-Mexico Border Community, published in 2019, higher proportions of Hispanics and dominant group members believed that police were using excessive physical force. Regardless of legal status, the racial profiling going on results in traumatic experiences for the person crossing the border. Because of inaccurate statistics and stereotypes, our people are being targeted and subjected to appalling experiences. As explained by author Alexander Updegrove in their article #MeToo at the U.S.-Mexico Border, Travelers' Experience of Gender-Based Misconduct, published in 2021, non-U.S. citizens are more at risk to experience abusive treatment and punishment from CBP officers, including being denied entry into the U.S. or visa revocation without explanation. Moreover, the abuse of power leads to sexual harassment. Updegrove states, it can be hard to distinguish between legitimate questions and questions designed to establish a traveler's whereabouts, so the officer can approach them later when off duty. This often leads to the women being followed through social media, or anytime they cross the border, they are harassed. Officers also get touchy when inspecting these women while crossing. They are put in a tough situation as a refusal of engaging with their comments could lead to them being detained and further harassed. Women should not fear being searched, or they should not be stalked for simply crossing the border, but it seems to be a reality for many. Additionally, according to Chapter 9 in the book Borderline Slavery, Mexico, United States, and the Human Trade, written by Toyan Payan, migrants are also subject to being trafficked. Payan brings up an interesting point when he states, increasingly hostile discord that considers all undocumented migrants to be guilty of breaking the law, regardless of how, where, and why they cross the border. Because of the stereotype that all Hispanic people crossing the border are doing illegally to commit crimes, the Border Patrol overlooks possible human trafficking. The victims are then also subjected to horrible treatment, as noted before, despite them being a victim of human trafficking. Now let's look at primary sources from people who have lived to tell their stories. In an interview, I Was Kidnapped at the U.S.-Mexico Border, published in 2021 by Vice, a victim retells the story of his kidnapping. The lack of protection at the border and the fact that the patrol's main focus is to catch people trying to commit illegal acts allows for these kidnappings to occur. This ties back into the argument Payan was stating. In another interview, Kidnapping, Rape, and Attempted Murder by Border Patrol, published by New York Times in 2018, 3 victims who wish to be anonymous explain their story of sexual abuse by a Border Patrol agent. MG, the mother of NC, stated, I felt like I was losing consciousness, but with every scream from my daughter, I was holding on as she was being abused in the woods. There are many corrupt Border Patrol agents out there, and the brave women had the courage to tell their story, but the amount of victims who did not speak up could be millions. In a report published by the Border Network for Human Rights, interviewed many victims. Almost all victims chose to stay anonymous. This victim goes by JNL and experienced harassment on September 25, 2021. She says, "He threw my face first and then grabbed me by the neck. I felt he was suffocating me. He yelled at me and told me to go ahead and report him and called me trash." The burst of violence was unwarranted and inappropriate use of power. The victim stated that upon the sheriff's officer's arrival, they wouldn't take a statement as they were there to transfer us to get fingerprinted, as stated by JNL. The abuse of power is a common theme within these victims' reports. In another interview published by the Border Network for Human Rights on May 12, 2021, victim AA was subjected to an inappropriate cavity search. MA stated, "My nightmare started on Wednesday, May 12 at 2 p.m. And when I was coming over by the Paso del Norte port of entry, I was coming from Juarez because I had surgery on one eye. I had to wear special glasses." The CBP officer stated, questioning me and asking me why I was so nervous. To which I responded, "I just had an eye surgery and I cannot be without my glasses for long." The CBP officer then asked if I had illegal drugs on me. I told her I had nothing on me. The CBP officer then sent me to get inspected in a room where they touched my whole body, including my private parts. I felt so bad and humiliated. I did not deserve to be treated that way. I felt so helpless. Unfortunately, stories like these don't seem to surface in the media. Countless people who cross the border suffer through racial profiling, abuse of power, harassment, and sexual advances. These sources are important to help an end to this treatment. The more victims that come out and make headlines, the more likely it is for the public to come together and get justice for these victims.